Kevin sent in an email asking about and clarifying cortisol. His question was, how can cortisol be both good and bad? Let me first explain what cortisol is on the good side of things. When you go to bed at night, if you were to take an evaluation of your cortisol levels in your blood, and I'll elaborate on what cortisol is in a moment, cortisol at the end of the day should be at its lowest level. And then as you go through the night and your body rejuvenates itself, it goes through its circadian rhythms, its sleep cycles, your cortisol levels naturally elevate, and it actually becomes an arousal hormone that wakes you up naturally. If you can set your day up where you can start it without the use of an alarm, you're going to notice this is what we call the vacation test. Go to bed when you're tired, cortisol levels should be very low. When you wake up in the morning, if you were to take a cortisol test, your cortisol levels should be high. So when you're dealing with general everyday health, cortisol is a good thing. When it gets drained, it's time to go to bed, and when you wake up in the morning, it should be at its highest. Unfortunately, cortisol is also part of your fight or flight. So like when you almost get in a car wreck and your parasympathetic system, sympathetic system just goes into overdrive and you get that flushed feeling, that's cortisol dropping into the bloodstream. Now, when your body is under a tremendous amount of stress, it could be relationship stress, financial stress, at the job, children, illness, dehydration, even overtraining, too much volume and or intensity, your body can't differentiate stress. All it knows is that heart rate is elevated. It knows it's hungry. It knows that it's just completely freaking out because of these different stressors that you're putting the body through. So cortisol is bad if you think about like a fuel injector. When you're under a lot of stress, the fuel injector just keeps dropping in cortisol. You go, well, why would cortisol be bad? Well, when the cortisol is being produced, understand that the entire body is being overstressed. Now, stress is a very big umbrella, as I just said, personally, professionally, financially, in the context of these videos, athletically. And what ends up happening is cortisol, when it just continues to drip, we refer to it as a fat magnet. At a hormonal level, if your body is under a tremendous amount of stress, your body fat percentage is going to go up. Stop and think about first responders. They're going to bed when they should be awake. They're awake when they should be going to bed. And because of that, a lot of first responders struggle with weight gain. These are some of the questions and frustrations we get from people who reach out to us that are in that profession, and they're like, why am I gaining all this weight? They're eating well, they're eating and sleeping the best they can. The problem is remember we talked about the circadian rhythm? When it's at its lowest, they're going to work. When it should be at the highest, they're going to bed. So what ends up happening is it creates a lot of confusion for the body. And unfortunately, it has to rely on you to try to figure out why is the stress level so high. So you have to offset that with food and sleep to try to keep the production of cortisol down, which keeps the body fat percentage down. Now let's look at it on a completely different context. When the body gets enough sleep, gets enough food, and gets the right balance personally, professionally, financially, and athletically, the body decreases cortisol levels and you actually start to drop body fat. I'll give you an example. We picked up a top-level marathon runner, female. She was underneath the tutelage of a coach that was high volume, high intensity, ironically, caloric restriction to try to maximize strength to weight ratios. And she was very frustrated because she was gaining a lot of body fat. So stop and think about that. Someone that's running 50 to 75 miles a week, gaining body fat, it doesn't seem possible, does it? So that's why I want you to see the power of cortisol at a hormonal level. When cortisol is predominantly in the blood and it's more than it should be, you are going to put on body fat. So cortisol is good if your stress is minimal. It's a natural hormone that wakes you up in the morning. Unfortunately, if your body's under a tremendous amount of excessive stress, it becomes counterproductive. And the frustrating part for you is it's going to make you fatter. So great question, as always, relevant to cortisol. And if you happen to have a question in any category, question, clarification, curiosity, please make sure that you reach out to us. contact@coachrob.com. We're answering a question a day, and I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to the clarification of cortisol, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.